World leaders have reacted to the early morning airstrikes on Caracas with mixed responses ranging from support to condemnation, while the European Union says it is closely monitoring developments. And to unpack the origins of these tensions, we are now joined by Professor Stefan Wolff, an expert in international security at the University of Birmingham in England. And he joins us now via our video link. And Professor, thank you so much for your time this evening here on SABC News. I mean, let's start off here, building up to this invasion. Of course, we were always told that it was really about the issues around oil in Venezuela. And looking at where we find ourselves now with the capture of Nicolas Maduro, where does this all stem from? Where the tensions between these two countries, of course, began?
Well, it's really difficult to see where this is all coming from, other than from a particular whim of the US president and those very close to him. Yes, I mean, Maduro was not a democratically elected leader. He had very little legitimacy. But then we also need to bear in mind that for all the problems that Venezuela has, for all the drugs and the cartel activity there, it's actually not the country that is most threatening to the US on those counts. I mean, most of the fentanyl comes in through Mexico, most of the cocaine comes in through Colombia. So I think from that perspective, it's hard to justify that Trump would go for Maduro first rather than for any of the other countries that for all intents and purposes, facilitate the flow of drugs to the United States, if that really is the main concern that he has.
And Prof, I saw that, we just ran a package now from my colleague, just also going at length to explain the issues around the oil refineries in the US, as well as these relations, detailing the relations when it comes to oil in the past. And when you look at, the US President Donald Trump yesterday during that press briefing saying that they have now taken over Venezuela, and of course they will be sending in their oil companies to take over, particularly when it comes to oil that was stolen from the US. What do you make of that rhetoric when it comes from US President Donald Trump?
Well, I mean, this is, again, there's so much in there that's really very difficult to unpack. I mean, what is certain is that, first of all, Venezuela is probably the country with the largest confirmed oil reserves in the world, about 300 billion barrels that sort of fall broadly within Venezuela. So, I mean, that's one issue. The second issue is that, yes, absolutely. I mean, the US and Venezuela had a deal that dates back to the 1950s, and that deal was gradually unraveled from the early 2000s under then President Hugo Chavez, who basically nationalized the oil industry, and most of the American companies gradually pulled out of Venezuela. So absolutely, I mean, there is something here that clearly motivates Trump in terms of the oil. But I think it's a completely different thing to assume that he can simply send the large US oil companies that he's been talking about during his press conference back into Venezuela. I mean, what these companies will want to know is actually what is going to be the security situation in Venezuela, what's going to be their legal situation. And all of these questions are completely unresolved. So when Trump says we are going to run the country, it's entirely unclear how he envisages that will actually work out and how the Venezuelans themselves will respond to that.
And let's talk about the reaction which we've seen from world leaders. I mean, from Sir Keir Starmer, the UK Prime Minister, saying that they will shed no tears in regards to Nicolas Maduro and calling him an illegitimate president. And, Latin America condemning that invasion from the US and going to capture Nicolas Maduro. At the same time, we've seen the likes of the EU saying that there should be a peaceful transition of power. What do you make of this mixed bag of views, of reaction from world leaders?
I think it's very interesting to see how different leaders are actually hedging their bets here. And what we have seen from the EU, what we have seen from the UK, as you mentioned, but also from Germany and other European countries, is predominantly a focus on the illegitimacy of Maduro, much less a focus on the fact that this was clearly a major violation of any rule or norm under international law. And the very fact that the EU, which always has championed international law, is not making that much more of an issue, tells us something where the world order in general is headed, and how important it is for the EU now to really try to salvage whatever there is salvageable of its relationship with the United States, so not to offend Donald Trump by criticizing his actions. What's even more ironic is the fact that now the staunchest defenders, in inverted commas, of this international order are Russia and China, and Russia in particular, which illegally annexed Crimea from Ukraine in 2014, has waged a full-scale, very brutal war against its neighbor since 2022. Russia now stands up and says, well, this is a clear and unacceptable violation of territorial integrity and sovereignty of an independent state. So we really see a massive reversal here of roles in terms of where different countries stand on the question of how much international law and international norms actually matter.
And when it comes to US President Donald Trump, we heard him yesterday talking about a second wave of attacks. And can we expect that to take place, even though he went as far as saying that, well, for now, it doesn't seem as if, they will be considering a second wave of attacks. And just tomorrow, we also know that the UN Security Council will then be convening an urgent meeting. What are your expectations of that meeting tomorrow?
I think the meeting will, at the UN in New York, will be very clear in the sense that most countries will condemn this act of invasion that the US has carried out here. So I think that that's beyond the question. On the other hand, it's equally unlikely that there will be any UN Security Council resolution that the US would not veto. So from that perspective, there will be a lot of hand-wringing in New York, as there has been already over the past day in other capitals around the world. But the actual consequences for the US will be very, very limited, simply because the US has demonstrated with this action, first of all, that it doesn't really care too much about what others think about its actions. And second, it has really demonstrated, again, the absolute superiority of its armed forces. So turning to the second part of your question about the second wave, I think this is entirely possible. I don't think it's imminent. I think Trump and his team will want to see how the Venezuelans respond, to what extent they will be accommodating his demands towards a transition, to what extent they will accept US tutelage of what is left of the government structures in Venezuela. But if they don't play ball in the way that Trump expects it, I think it's entirely possible that there will be a second round of military action conducted by the United States.